Imagine tuning in late at night, scrolling through classic 80s movie clips on your phone, half awake but intrigued by the nostalgia of neon lights and synth pop soundtracks. Suddenly you see a familiar face, the impish grin, the spiked hair, the kind of boyish charm that made hearts flutter in teen magazines decades ago. That face belongs to Corey Haim, a star whose life story reads like one of Hollywood's most bittersweet sagas, a cautionary tale of early fame, frenetic success, devastating addiction, and an ever-present glimmer of hope for redemption. Tonight, let's take a deep dive into the life of Corey Ian Haim, a story that begins in Toronto, Canada, and ends in a modest apartment near Hollywood, yet leaves an undeniable legacy in pop culture. Corey Haim entered this world on December 23, 1971, in Toronto, Ontario. His parents were Judy and Bernie Haim. Judy, an Israeli-born data processor, and Bernie, a clothing sales representative. They gave Corey a sense of his Jewish heritage, raising him alongside his older sister Carol. Eventually, he would also gain a half-brother, Daniel, from his father's later relationship. In those earliest days, Corey was anything but outgoing, shy, somewhat nervous, more comfortable skating around on a hockey rink than performing in front of crowds. While some kids might dream of taking center stage at a school play, Corey gravitated towards sports and comic books, losing himself in the pages of colorful heroes. But fate had a different plan. Judy noticed her son's bashfulness and decided that maybe acting classes could help him break out of his shell. At the time, the idea was simply to get him out of his comfort zone, not necessarily to launch a career. Still, Corey's involvement deepened when he'd tag along with his sister Carol to her auditions. Something about being on a set, with bright lights and the focus on performance, felt electric. Suddenly, the quiet kid discovered a spark of excitement. He was soon cast in over 10 Canadian commercials, hawking Pepsi and Polaroid products while learning the ropes of showbiz. Interestingly, young Corey also toyed with the idea of a music career, dabbling with a keyboard and picturing himself as a future pop star. But the lure of the camera, the script, and the applause proved stronger, leading him into acting sooner than he might have anticipated. By 1982, Corey Haim was around 10 years old, and he landed a role in The Edison Twins, a Canadian TV series that gave him a taste of episodic storytelling. Imagine a wide-eyed kid, not even in high school yet, juggling lines and learning how TV production worked behind the scenes. The experience was a far cry from the hockey rink, but he found it thrilling. The following years proved that this wasn't a random hobby. Corey was talented. In 1984, he made his film debut in Firstborn, rubbing shoulders with future Hollywood heavyweights like Sarah Jessica Parker and Robert Downey Jr. That performance snagged him a Young Artist Award nomination. The film's director, Michael Apted, commented on Corey's natural vulnerability, which jumped off the screen. Even as a kid, Corey had a way of breaking down emotional walls and letting audiences see directly into his earnest heart. Hollywood noticed. By 1985, he'd taken on roles in Stephen King's Silver Bullet and the TV movie A Time to Live. He won a Young Artist Award for A Time to Live, and the accolade didn't just boost his visibility. It also convinced his mother that relocating to Los Angeles might be the best move for his career. So Judy and Corey left Toronto for Hollywood, stepping into the land of palm trees, paparazzi, and endless auditions. Not everyone can hack it in Los Angeles. Some arrive starry-eyed only to head home disillusioned. But Corey found early success, and he was still just a teenager. It was 1986 when Haim got his first serious critical attention for his role in Lucas. He played a sensitive, bespectacled kid, socially awkward, too smart for his own good, yet unflinchingly earnest. Critics and fans alike found the performance relatable. Roger Ebert even predicted that Corey might become an important actor, praising the young star's ability to convey both innocence and depth. On set, castmates like Winona Ryder later recalled his genuine charm, but noted he also appeared a bit uneasy beneath that friendly exterior. There was always something in his eyes that made you feel like he was searching for acceptance, or maybe still struggling to shake off shyness. Then came 1987, the year that truly catapulted him to teen heartthrob status. The Lost Boys, directed by Joel Schumacher, cast Corey Haim opposite Corey Feldman. The pair, quickly branded as the two Coreys, had a dynamic that felt like lightning in a bottle. The Lost Boys was the perfect blend of horror, comedy, and 80s style, with Haim's wide-eyed innocence countering Feldman's tougher persona. Haim's face, impish grin, spiked hair, ended up on magazine covers from Teen Beat to Tiger Beat, fueling an entire generation's crushes. Suddenly, Corey Haim wasn't just another Hollywood hopeful, he was a bona fide star. Almost overnight, the two Coreys became a brand. In the late 80s, they capitalized on their newfound popularity, appearing together in License to Drive, 1988, and Dream a Little Dream, 1989. Though these films had varying degrees of critical reception, the fan response was intense. Teens lined up at the box office, hungry for more of the duo's comedic escapades and friendly banter. Behind the scenes, however, Corey Haim's life was sliding off the rails. Despite being attached to star vehicles, he was dealing with an escalating problem: substance abuse. It's often reported that the seeds of Haim's drug issues were planted on the set of Lucas, where he first sampled alcohol at just 14. Like many cautionary tales in Hollywood, it started small: beer, maybe some experimentation with marijuana. But the environment he found himself in was full of temptations. While filming The Lost Boys, rumors swirled that Haim was smoking marijuana regularly. By the time he was starring in bigger films and reaping the rewards of teen idol success, his usage was spiraling into more dangerous substances like cocaine and, eventually, crack. Sometimes the people around him suspected something was off, but the demands of a busy film schedule and the swirl of Hollywood parties often meant there was no one truly looking out for his best interests. At this point, Haim was still seeing career success. He was even dating actress Alyssa Milano from 1987 until around 1990. But that relationship, like many others in Corey's life, would unravel due to his drug habit. Alyssa reportedly tried to help him, even involving her parents in an attempt to get him clean. But addiction is a battle that can't be won from the outside if the person at the center isn't ready to fight. By the dawn of the 1990s, the Corey Haim magic that had sparkled so bright in the mid to late 80s began to fade. He went from starring in major studio releases to featuring in direct-to-video efforts like Prayer of the Roller Boys, 1990, and Fast Getaway, 1991. While these films have their fans, they didn't offer the same prestige, budgets, or box office traction as his earlier hits. Haim's personal struggles were becoming well known around Hollywood. On-set reliability was a gamble. Would he show up prepared or in a haze? He even released a self-promotional video in 1989 called Corey Haim, Me, Myself, and I, a bizarre rambling piece filmed in one day while he was allegedly under the influence. Critics and fans alike mocked it as one of the worst movies ever, though it was more sad than funny, really. An unfiltered look at a kid drowning in fame he wasn't equipped to handle. The routine in Hollywood can be cruel. You're in high demand one moment, then tossed aside when the next bright young star comes along. The combination of rampant substance abuse, declining public image, and a series of questionable film choices almost guaranteed his mainstream career would evaporate. In 1997, Corey Haim filed for bankruptcy. Debts had stacked up. Failed projects, living expenses, and the steep costs of his drug use all took their toll. Over the next few years, his life would turn into a cycle of rehab stints, reportedly 15 of them over his lifetime, occasional overdoses, and fleeting moments of clarity when it seemed like he might turn things around. He'd check into Betty Ford or Promises in Malibu, vow to get sober, then relapse. The addiction overshadowed nearly every aspect of his life, and to make matters worse, serious health complications emerged. There were rumors of at least one stroke, while at one point his weight reportedly ballooned to around 300 pounds. Meanwhile, his relationship with his mother, Judy, remained one of the few constants. She had been there from the beginning, enrolling him in acting classes to help him break out of his shell. Now, even as an adult, Corey ended up living with her off and on, trying to find stability. Judy herself battled breast cancer at one point, a fight that put stress on both of them. For years, mother and son were locked in a worrisome dance. She tried to keep him on a stable path while he wrestled with demons that refused to let go. Amid all this turmoil, allegations began surfacing that Corey Haim had been sexually abused during his youth in Hollywood. The other Corey Feldman, would discuss these in interviews and in his memoir, Choreography, suggesting that Haim's troubles were rooted in dark experiences no child should endure. One name that came up in these allegations was producer Alfie Hoffman, but the most incendiary claim involved Charlie Sheen, a claim Sheen has categorically denied. Judy Haim dismissed Feldman's statements, but the rumors persisted, painting a picture of a teen star who was vulnerable in more ways than one, caught in a predatory industry that failed to protect him. The truth remained tangled in a mess of denial, conflicting accounts, and no definitive legal resolutions. But the stories added a grim layer to an already tragic trajectory. Haim's romantic life never found stable ground. After Alyssa Milano, there were brief flings with Nicole Eggert, and rumor has it a pre-Spice Girls Victoria Beckham, though that's always been reported with a wink and a question mark. None of these relationships lasted, and he never married. The most enduring relationship in his adult life seemed to be his friendship with Corey Feldman, but even that was tested by Haim's substance abuse and unreliability. Feldman, for his own sake, had to distance himself during Haim's most erratic years, leading fans to wonder if the two Coreys would ever reconcile in a lasting way. The early 2000s saw Haim in what he called an 8-year hiatus, but in truth, it was a long struggle to overcome addiction and manage recurring health problems. Occasionally, rumors circulated that he was clean and ready for a comeback. By 2007, he and Feldman appeared together in a reality show on A&E called The Two Coreys, which documented their attempt to revive their friendship and maybe their careers. The show provided a shockingly raw glimpse into Haim's life. He exhibited slurred speech, battled emotional breakdowns, and often came off as unstable on camera. Audiences tuned in, the ratings spiked, but critics called it a train wreck, the kind of show that some watch out of morbid curiosity rather than genuine support. It was an intensely personal look at how fame can break someone down, piece by piece. Even so, it proved that the public was still invested in Corey Haim. People wanted to see him win, even if just for a moment. In 2009, a flicker of hope appeared. He landed a small role in Crank, High Voltage, performing alongside Jason Statham. He also scored a role in American Sunset 2010, suggesting he might be inching his way back into mainstream projects. Though these roles didn't signal a full Hollywood comeback, they indicated Haim was at least out there trying, auditioning, and staying sober enough to work. Friends of his would say that during those times, he seemed a bit more upbeat, as if the possibility of reclaiming his place in Hollywood fueled him with a renewed sense of purpose. By early 2010, though, Corey Haim's life was far from glamorous. He and Judy lived in a modest apartment in the Oakwood complex near Burbank, practically at the edge of Hollywood Hills. Stories emerged that he was selling personal items on eBay, some quite bizarre, like hair or even teeth to make ends meet, though the site eventually banned such listings. It was painful evidence of how much he struggled financially. Neighbors occasionally spotted him wandering around, friendly yet a bit lost, seemingly in search of conversation or companionship. There were also encouraging signs. Some people observed he looked healthier, had gained some weight back in a positive way, and might finally be on track to staying clean. According to some accounts, he claimed to have been sober for 2 weeks, under the supervision of a treatment specialist who was adjusting his medications. That brings us to the night of March 9th, 2010. Corey Haim, feeling under the weather with flu-like symptoms, a fever hovering between 99 and 101 degrees Fahrenheit, was short of breath and complained of chest tightness. Judy urged him to go to the hospital, but he seemed reluctant, maybe dismissing it as just a passing bug. He asked his mom to lie beside him for comfort, something that conjures such a poignant image, a 38-year-old man still reaching for maternal reassurance after a lifetime of tumult. But the scene took a dire turn around midnight. Corey stood up, felt dizzy, and then collapsed. Judy dialed 911 just after 1 a.m. Paramedics arrived to find him unresponsive. They rushed him to Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, but it was too late. At 2:15 a.m. on March 10th, 2010, Corey Haim was pronounced dead. He was only 38 years old. In the immediate aftermath, the media latched onto the obvious narrative. A one-time teen idol with a very public battle against addiction dies young. Must be an overdose. Prescription drugs were found at the scene, Valium, Vicodin, Soma, haloperidol, reinforcing the assumption that another life had been cut short by lethal substances. Yet the months that followed revealed a more complicated truth. The Los Angeles County coroner eventually reported that Corey Haim died of natural causes. Pneumonia, specifically diffuse alveolar damage, which was aggravated by an enlarged heart, and severely narrowed coronary arteries. While investigators discovered that Haim had doctor shopped, obtaining a staggering 553 pills in the 32 days before his death, none of those medications were present in levels high enough to kill him outright. Traces of 8 different drugs were in his system, including over-the-counter meds and marijuana, but none had reached a fatal concentration. So if the final cause wasn't an overdose, how did this tragedy occur? It seemed the years of drug use had ravaged his immune system and cardiovascular health, leaving him vulnerable. The coroner's statement that he died of pneumonia, natural causes, feels almost anticlimactic, given the sensational rumors. But the deeper tragedy is that his body was simply worn out, no longer capable of bouncing back from even a minor illness. Much like the boy who once timidly stepped onto the ice for a hockey game, hoping to be braver than he felt, Corey Haim couldn't withstand the final blow of an ailment that might have been manageable under healthier conditions. He was laid to rest on March 16, 2010, in a private Jewish funeral at Steele's Memorial Chapel in Thornhill, Ontario, with around 200 mourners in attendance. Both his mother and father were there, though they had long been separated. The ceremony was small, reflecting the diminishing circle of support in his life. Corey Feldman did not attend, explaining he wanted to avoid turning the funeral into a media circus. Some people criticized him for not showing up. Others understood that Haim's death had stirred up a media frenzy Feldman didn't want overshadowing the solemnity of the moment. Still, the story didn't end at that funeral. In the months and years afterward, controversies continued to surface. Corey Feldman doubled down on claims that Haim's death was a byproduct of the sexual abuse he suffered in Hollywood, naming Charlie Sheen in the process, an accusation that Sheen and many others firmly denied. Judy Haim came out strongly against Feldman's narrative, calling it exploitative. Fans were left unsure of where to place their faith. The rift between Feldman and Judy Haim only deepened, turning the aftermath of Corey's death into a swirl of he said, she said headlines, overshadowing the deeper tragedy of lost potential. Despite the drama, Corey Haim's final film, Decisions, premiered posthumously in 2011. Critics and fans alike noted fleeting moments in his performance that recalled the sweet, earnest boy from Lucas. It was a sobering reminder of the acting potential that still glimmered under the surface, glimpses of what might have been if circumstances had allowed him a fairer shot. In the bigger picture, Corey Haim's cultural impact endures. Watch The Lost Boys today, and you'll see a perfect time capsule of the 1980s, with Haim's personality anchoring the movie's youthful spirit. Revisit License to Drive or Dream a Little Dream, and you'll sense that intangible star quality that made teen girls swoon and teen boys want to emulate his cool factor. He remains a quintessential 1980s icon, often brought up in discussions about child actors, the pitfalls of stardom, and the darker side of Hollywood's relentless machine. For many fans, Haim's story is a haunting what if. What if he had gotten help earlier? What if the exploitation allegations had been addressed in time to prevent the trauma that might have fueled his drug use? What if better roles had come along when he was trying to straighten out his life? The heartbreak is that these questions will never be answered. Instead, they cast a shadow over the bright-eyed performances that first captivated audiences in the 80s. To this day, people sometimes visit his grave at Pardes Shalom Cemetery, leaving small mementos and notes, tokens of an enduring fan base that can't forget the sweet kid who grew up too fast under Hollywood's glare. Online fan communities share old interviews, behind-the-scenes anecdotes, and tributes. Documentaries sometimes feature segments on Corey Haim, using him as an example of how the entertainment industry can simultaneously build someone up and break them down. Discussions about child actor exploitation often invoke his name to illustrate the urgent need for better protections and safer working environments. Despite everything, Haim's legacy isn't only defined by the tragedy of his last days or the controversies that followed. There's also a simpler, purer memory of a young actor who gave genuinely moving performances. He could play lovable misfits and insecure dreamers with an authenticity that resonates even now. That authenticity can't be faked. It was part of who Corey was, perhaps linked to the shy Canadian kid who got nudged into acting classes against his will but ended up discovering the rush of performing. In that sense, maybe his story reminds us to look deeper at the pressures facing child stars. Many come to Hollywood with big dreams, but the reality is tough. Intense competition, a lifestyle of extremes, a swirl of agents, managers, paparazzi, and enablers ready to exploit them. Add personal demons or unprocessed trauma, and the risk of a downward spiral grows. Corey Haim's life underscores that no matter how bright a person's smile or how big their poster is on teenage bedroom walls, there's still a human being who can be overwhelmed by the burdens of fame. Years after his death, fans still speculate on who might be telling the truth regarding abuse allegations, or what exact combination of heartbreak, trauma, and addiction led to his final collapse. The official coroner's report tells one story, but the swirl of Hollywood rumor and personal testimonies tells another. It's unlikely we'll ever have a pristine, satisfying conclusion. What we do have is the indelible mark left by a bright, open-faced teenager who made us believe in underdogs, freaked us out in vampire flicks, and made us laugh in zany teen comedies. If you visit his grave at Pardes Shalom Cemetery, you might find a small note from a fan or a flower from someone who cherished his movies growing up. That final resting place in Ontario stands in stark contrast to the vibrant promise of Los Angeles, the place where he soared to dizzying heights. Yet maybe returning to his Canadian roots is a reminder of who Corey Haim was before Hollywood found him, a shy kid who loved hockey, lived in a Jewish household with a loving mother, and accidentally discovered he had a knack for acting. With every year that passes, tributes emerge, documentaries, memorial posts, interviews from those who knew him. Corey Feldman continues to invoke Haim's memory in cautionary discussions about childhood exploitation in the industry, although that narrative remains tangled in dispute. For many fans, the finger-pointing and revelations don't alter their core memory. A warm, sweet boy who seemed to represent the innocence and excitement of the 1980s, undone by the very system that celebrated him. Perhaps the takeaway from Corey Haim's story is that genuine talent and open-hearted vulnerability can burn brilliantly in the public eye, but they also need compassion and guidance to keep from burning out. Hollywood, as a machine, particularly in the era of the 80s and 90s, didn't always provide that. Or if help was offered, it came when the damage was already deeply rooted. Haim's story is a testament to how addiction, once it takes hold, can overshadow everything: friendships, romance, family bonds, and even the most promising career. Yet for all the darkness, there remains that layer of unbreakable fondness for him. Teens of the 80s remember plastering pictures of Corey Haim on their walls, swooning over his grin. Others recall identifying with Lucas, cheering for the awkward kid to find acceptance. That nostalgic connection cements him as an icon. Even newcomers, decades removed, might stumble upon the Lost Boys for the first time and think, this Haim guy is awesome. What happened to him? Thus beginning the painful journey of learning his fate. And so we circle back to that moment when you first rediscover him online. The late-night browsing, stumbling on an old trailer or a behind-the-scenes featurette. There he is, childlike and confident at the same time, unaware of the heartbreak that lies ahead. It's a snapshot of innocence colliding with an industry that would prove far less gentle than it seemed. For Corey Haim, every comedic line, every soulful look was a piece of himself he shared with the audience. Even if everything else was chaotic and uncertain, when the cameras rolled, he found a semblance of stability, if only for a few fleeting moments. So here we are, reflecting on a life that ended too soon, but continues to echo through pop culture. Corey Haim may not have gotten the triumphant comeback he so often hinted at, but his memory endures in reruns, online tributes, and the hearts of those who saw something special in him. He remains a poignant example of how the line between adoration and exploitation can blur dangerously in Hollywood. He also remains a testament to the human capacity to keep striving, no matter how many times addiction and misfortune knock us down. That's Corey Ian Haim, a fragile, luminous star whose story still calls out to anyone who's ever dreamed of fame or wrestled with the darkness behind the spotlight. May we remember him for the laughter and joy he brought to countless fans, and may his story serve as a reminder that compassion and accountability are as vital in show business as any red carpet box office smash or screaming crowd of adoring fans. Let that memory be his legacy, shining on in the night sky of Hollywood legends, reminding us of both the beauty and the perils in the quest for stardom.